Hello friends, welcome back to the show. In this video, we shall be exploring a dark topic, that of death. Death is our final experience, and it is also the final healing to all our suffering. For everything that is born, death is the only certainty. And actually, dying is a dynamic phase of living. So let us explore that a little deeper. The persons who are the target audience for this video are medical professionals, counselors and psychologists, caregivers, healers, and the aged and the sick, as well as any person who is interested in the topic of understanding death, the process of dying, and helping those who are going through this stage of life. I shall begin with a disclaimer and a claimer. First of all, this video is not a substitute for medical advice. And importantly, it is based on research published in international peer-reviewed medical journals or textbooks or other reference materials. Let us begin by asking, what exactly is death? One commonly accepted definition is that death is the irreversible cessation of all vital functions. Vital functions are generally understood to be the functions of the heart and brain. Now that's a rather cold clinical technical definition. Let's have an exploration of what death can also mean. As mentioned earlier, people are averse to talk about death and about dying. But in everyday English language, we use the death word in our everyday language without realizing it, because the word that we substitute for death is the Latin word mort. This root underlies the basic phenomena of death, and it is expressed in so many words that we use on a day-to-day basis. For example, mortal. We talk about all creatures being mortal. And the opposite of that, immortality. Or take another interesting word, mortgage. What does it mean? It means it is a dead pledge. If you fail to pay the property for which you have borrowed money, that property is dead for you. Then we have a mortician, a person who prepares the dead bodies for a funeral. And of course, mortuary, a place where you park the dead before you take them for their funeral rites. Post-mortem is another common word. And of course, then we have mortified. What mortified actually means is that you almost or actually die out of embarrassment. What you'll see is that this four-letter word is encapsulated in all these common day-to-day vocabulary of ours. So we ought to see death in a wider framework, not just the cessation of your essential or vital functions of the body. So, for the purpose of this video, we shall expand our definition of death to include a living death, a life that lacks any satisfaction or purpose. So, death can be expanded to mean any life-changing transformation. It could be grief, it could be a paralyzing accident, an irreversible health condition, a deeply hurtful social condition like ostracization, or any such shock that turns your life around a new normal, or it just turns your life upside down, something that you never expected, something that you cannot associate yourself with or recognize as your old normal self or old normal life. We form our opinions quite early in life. Those of us who are educated in English or in some other European language are unwittingly influenced by Christian metaphors and opinions. Thus, the views on death largely derive from that particular Abrahamic tradition. regardless of whether you're from India and regardless of which faith you follow. The language in which you first formed your views matter a lot in your outlook of the world as you see it today. Some of these views on death are that death are the wages of sin. This is from St. Paul's Gospel, named as the Book of Romans, known to be the clearest and most systematic presentation of the Christian doctrine amongst all the other scriptures. One doctrine states that death is actually a prolonged sleep, which is to be followed by a mass resurrection of all those who have died before you, to be followed by a mass trial. Another opinion is that there is an immediate summary individual trial and that is followed by a judgment. And invariably there are only two destinations. It's either heaven or hell. These are ideas that stick in your mind for a long time. The hell has got a terrible picture, and that is why everyone fears death. But even in Europe, until a century or a little longer ago, it was accepted that death was the only certainty of life. And the Latin phrase memento mori meant, remember, you must die. But today we are obsessed with living forever, and that too being a youth for the rest of your life. That is why everyone is today obsessed with exercise regimes, diet, fitness literature. And the common motto is be as young as you feel. And the latest fad, of course, is cryonics, which is to freeze your body until the day when you find the technology and the medicine to make you or bring you back to life as you would like it to be in perfect youth. In contrast to Western theology and the concepts of death, India has had a long tradition of the discussion on death. One such epic is the Mahabharata. Even in India, most Hindus have not read the Mahabharata. However, they do have a little acquaintance with it, but that too only through television serials. Of course, that is much better than having no introduction at all. In the Mahabharata, there is a dialogue between Yudhishthir, the eldest of the Pandava brothers, and a Yaksha, or a celestial being. And that discussion covers a slew of matters on philosophy, dharma, and many other topics. Death is also one of them. In chapter 296 of the Aranyak Parva, we have a dialogue in which Yudhishthir answers some questions. And one of the questions is, which is the greatest wonder in the world? And we shall see what was his answer. The reply given by Yudhishthir is, Anyani bhutani gacchantiha yamalayam. Every day countless beings go to the abode of Yama, that is, they die. And even so, Sheshaha sthavaram icchantihi kim achyanamatah param. In other words, the rest that remain, or those who are left behind alive, still continue to believe that they are immortal. Can there be a greater wonder? Well, I am happy to tell you that at a time when medical advances seem to have extended lifespans, it is heartening to know that death as a topic of discussion is making a comeback. The taboo is being lifted. And the message of this video is that it is not just about facing death. It is about preparing for death and not ignoring it. Remember, it's a dynamic process. It is part of life, and it is also your final healing. Back in the 15th century, even in Europe, it was acknowledged that dying was as much an art as was living. In fact, it had a Latin name for that, and that was Ars Moriendi, which is the art of dying, and it was a unified part of the art of living. However, recent advances in medicine have shut down this discussion for a good part of the past century or longer. The motto of modern medicine is that death can and must be delayed at all costs. That itself has become an end in itself and is assisted by better healthcare, new treatments such as antibiotics, dialysis, chemotherapy, nutrition programs, immunization, and other developments that has radically changed the experience of dying and living for people who are normally rushed to the hospital. And the end point of rushing a person to the hospital is to postpone dying. They are offered hope, and their experience of living is actually made quite miserable. We must change that, and we must get control back in our hands to have a living and dying as artfully as it is supposed to be. I would like to refer to this particular paper, which was published by the BMJ Journal of Medical Ethics back in 2011. It talks about a new term, medical futility at the end of life. It seeks to answer a question: why are life-sustaining treatments continued despite being recognized as futile? It asks a very fundamental question which to some appears at odds with the purpose of medicine. Because today we have taken the purpose of medicine to be to extend life at all costs. The primary reason for continuing these life-prolonging procedures is actually misplaced emotion. The reasons for continuing futile LSTs are primarily emotional, and the emotions that rule are guilt, grief, fear of legal consequences, and concern about the family's reaction or that individual who is in that state. Until recently, psychiatry felt that they had a very limited role as far as death and dying was concerned. They were not directly concerned with death per se, and they felt that their role was limited to preventing suicide or forensic psychiatry. But they never thought that the dying experience was worth exploring and studying. But of course that was to change around 50 years ago, and we shall see how. For those of you who wish to study the subject deeper, I would recommend you at least these 3 books as primers or essential reading. They are On Death and Dying by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She was a Swiss physician who later settled in the United States and is very famous because she did a lot of her professional work with people who were on the verge of dying or were going through the death experience. Next is The Denial of Death by Ernest Becker. And finally is a book by Catherine Mannix titled With the End in Mind. I have developed this video after referring to this literature. This diagram is actually a graphical representation of the concepts developed by Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. The vertical axis represents the mood of the person, and the horizontal line shows time. The red arrow is the moment of impact. That impact is disclosure or discovery of a terminal condition where death is probably the only option. There is shock when this particular fact is revealed to that person, and then that is followed by this roller coaster ride of emotions. Starting with shock, the person first goes into denial, and we shall see this particular aspect of denial in greater detail. In denial, there is total disbelief, and the person is looking for evidence that it isn't true. This could be followed by anger. Anger that things are going to be different. Things are not going to be as the person would wish them to be. This could later follow into a depression, And after that comes the stage where the person is ready to accept what is going on and is bargaining for a new engagement with the situation. Finally, the situation resolves and there is acceptance or integration. And then the person comes out as a renewed individual, a person who is not in denial anymore, who is not angry, who is not depressed, who is not bargaining for anything, and yet is now prepared for dying or leaving this world. Of course, it may not happen in the same sequence. In fact, that was some of the initial criticism of the work of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. But as the theory matured, they found that these stages could happen in a different sequence. For example, there could be anger at the initial disclosure and the shock could follow later. The shock could very well come after the stage of denial. Similarly, bargaining could happen before and depression occur later. But very broadly, these are the different stages. If not in the same sequence, they definitely are pretty good guides to the moods of a person who is going through the stages of preparing for and facing death. Denial from the medical establishment can take many forms. Even if there is no spoken disclosure, the cues are easy to discern because very often silence is more articulate than words. For example, the doctor may say that they have no treatment to offer, or there may be absolutely no improvement in the physical state despite all the medication and the motions of action that are going on around the hospital bed. In fact, the condition of the patient may be even getting worse. The doctors may start avoiding visits, or they may not meet the person in the eye. And most of all, the person is able to see grief in the eyes of the family. But there is a total dark silence. Nobody wants to use the D word. There can be other latent forms of denial from the establishment. The doctors may continue to order investigations and treatments even though it will not change the course of disease. Worse, they could prolong the last stage into one of tremendous discomfort to the person. They may order intravenous hydration, transfusions, ventilators, and even to the extent of cardiac resuscitation, even though that may be very painful. When prognosis is certain, why not let the person be free of pain and to be at peace and free from meddlesome technology? Won't it be much better if this stage of clinical or medical establishment fueled form of denial could be cut short? Here is a list of symptoms which could help a person to understand that the end is near. There could be continuous crying or a desire to be weepy. It could be headaches, difficulty in getting sleep, and often questioning in one's mind as to what is the real purpose of life. There could also be a feeling of detachment, where a person's mood suddenly shows that the person is losing interest in things which formerly engaged him or her. There could be a loss of appetite, a feeling of isolation, abnormal behavior, or there could be worry about near and dear ones. There could be heightened anxiety, and that is quite natural because death, or the fact that death is near, can be full of fear, either because of a person's belief systems or simply because one doesn't know what is going to happen next. What will be the new form of existence after the body is departed by the person? There could be feelings of guilt and remorse over what has happened over the course of a lifetime. There could also be tremendous anger at why me kind of a situation. The list would go on, but this list can probably help a person to recognize that the end is near, and it can also guide the people around that person to understand that the end is near. Increasingly, psychiatrists and other medical care professionals are understanding is that the final preparation that a person needs to do is the spiritual preparation. And this doesn't mean following some kind of a religious ritual, although even rituals can help tremendously if that person belongs to a certain faith or a belief system. One must understand that this is not a period of passive waiting and despair. Mostly the people around you are not educated into this phase of caregiving. You must remember this is not a period of passive waiting and despair. The final stage of life is actually a time to review the past. It is a time for completion and reconciliation. We shall see what exercises can be undertaken in this final spiritual preparation. Let us now look at the Life Review Experience, or LRE for short. An LRE is a phenomenon that is widely reported as occurring during near-death experiences. In this experience, a person rapidly sees much or the totality of their life history in a chronological sequence and in extreme detail and over a very short span of time. It seems as if it's a film or a set of slides that are running and you are able to review your life. Such experiences, of course, have a profound influence on the outlook and experience of life once a person returns from that near-death experience. But one actually need not wait for such an occurrence to occur. You can learn techniques that allow you to explore this realm of consciousness without getting anywhere close to death, and yet derive the same benefit of healing. Very briefly, what is done is that you write a sort of a story of your life, or a gatha. I'm not talking about the near-death experience. I'm talking about a summary of the technique that you can follow after learning it from some teacher. Gatha is one such technique. It's the story of your life, which you are writing for your own review. This is your final comment on your life. How would you like your obituary to be written? And can you summarize the purpose of your life? During our living time, we have been so busy just existing and meeting with the requirements of the present. But did you ever have the time to reflect upon the purpose of your life? This can be done without actually dying or coming anywhere close to death. But this is going to heal a lot of wounds of your consciousness and prepare you to lead a better life till you actually exit this world. Another option to LRE is journaling. Journaling is writing your thoughts with focus. The grief of preparing to die is very complex, it's very deep, and it is unique and personal. So what exactly do we write in a journal? Remember, this is going to be like a meditation, a very focused activity. So you will need to identify your fears, grief, remorse, or you can even take the liberty of writing it in the form of a memoir, your own personal biography, without indulging in justifications, judgments. Just a record, a free-flowing record of your emotions, what you will be thinking of when you're going to pass into another realm. Some people like to make it a little impersonal by adopting a creative non-fiction style. Remember, this is going to be your tool for self-discovery. It can be very insightful and it will be very healing. For the simple reason, as we have seen in the title of this video, death is actually the final healing. And the closer you come to that experience, the closer you are to finding ultimate healing for all your pains, aches, sorrows. Plato had once said that the real philosophy is the practice of death, if not at every moment, at least in a focused way while journaling. One part of the day can be reserved for that, a few minutes at best. Here is a beautiful quote from the works of Lao Tzu. It says, "When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be." By resisting death, we are actually moving away from a whole world of possibilities yet unknown. By following some of the practices and remedial measures in this video, a person can actually get closer to enjoying the transformation that is waiting to happen. Now, why is it important to do the LRE or the life review experience? Well, as the German mystic Jakob Behmen, who lived in the 16th century, said, "He who does not die before he dies perishes when he dies." What exactly does it mean? It means your death will actually be in vain, so better to do the LRE in full consciousness rather than wait till the end when you may or may not be in a conscious state to do it with full awareness. That is how important the life review is. It can be done, in fact, over the course of a few minutes every day. That could be the foundation or basis of your meditation. Ramana Maharshi, a Hindu sage of the 20th century, had once said that the real answer to every serious question is to see who is asking. So when you do a life review, you must remember you are the one who is asking the question, as well as the person who is seeking the answer. So you have to be very honest. You must approach yourself from a variety of angles and have a perspective view, so to say. You must keep coming back to your true and identity, the present identity. You must stop all game playing. You must stop pretending and reveal yourself to yourself. That, in brief, is how to conduct an LRE. And as we said earlier, this is not a one-time exercise. This can be scheduled into your daily practice. In the beginning, I had said that the art of living and the art of dying are two sides of the same coin. Now, art is all about arranging. You mix colors and arrange them in a certain way of expression to create a new reality. The art lies in anticipating the moment and to die consciously, even before you lose physical consciousness. And remember, a person retains consciousness even in coma. That is the true meaning of the phrase to die before one dies. In other words, you must cease postponing your own death. You don't have to be physically dead. All you got to do is be through that experience. And that is why the true medicine or remedy for death is actually quite homeopathic in nature. When I use the word homeopathic, I mean referring to the principles of similars. A homeopathic remedy is one that can create the sensations and symptoms of a condition in a healthy person. The LRE will be the medicine that creates all the sensations and symptoms of death, yet while you stay alive. One can follow the practice of forgiveness after an LRE process. Forgiveness is actually a much misunderstood term. It is often misunderstood of being guilty of some wrongdoing. I love this quote by Louise Hay, a great healer of our times. And she said that guilt is a useless emotion. What exactly does she mean by that? It does not make you feel any better. And worse, it does not change your situation. At the same time, it takes up your valuable time and attention. focus that you could use so well in the practices that have been described in this video. Another important process is for managing states of the mind. This is a picture of Dr. Edward Bach, and he said that there is no true healing unless there is a change in outlook, there is peace of mind and inner happiness. Now, this is an intervention that you can use in the process of death, and I'm using death in the wider definition which I mentioned earlier. What are the areas in which these remedies can help? These remedies are known as Bach flower remedies. Their selection is actually very intuitive, something you can learn on your own, and they're very easy to administer. They can be controlled both in dosage and in frequency entirely by the person who wants to manage his state of mind. Take a very primary emotion or mental outlook, that of fear. In the topic under discussion, the most common states of mind which are experienced by people are a state of dark loneliness, or where and when will I die, or what lies beyond life, what will be my experience of death. And once again, death does not just mean the cessation of the vital functions. It means a complete outlook to be changed for the kind of life that is to follow that particular incident from where this grief started. There can be fear about the process of dying. Will it be painful? Will it be troublesome? Will it be embarrassing? It is really one experience you're going to have just once in your present state of existence. And what happens after that? What happens to the consciousness? That can be something that troubles a person quite a lot. There are various remedies for each one of these conditions. Another area where a person may need Bach flower remedies is anger. Anger always follows the disclosure of that condition. The keywords which are used by people to describe their anger, it may not be that they lash out or throw things, but they may seem morose and sad. They might feel that it is really unfair what they are suffering. Why is it that I am suffering this so early? Or a general question of why me? What have I done to deserve this? Once again, there are Bach flower remedies to address these and so many other mental states and emotional conditions associated with anger. As we mentioned earlier, there could be feelings of guilt and remorse for things which have been done, which could have been done, and for those which should have been done. As Louise Hayes has said, that guilt is really a useless emotion, but so are so many other useless things to which we cling. Can Bach flower remedies help us to overcome this state of mind? Yes, indeed, they can be. The processes mentioned in this video are some of the techniques that can help find meaning during this stage of life. A person undergoing this experience can use these, and so can you as a medical professional, as a counselor, psychologist, caregiver. You can help that person reach the stage where the purpose of life becomes clearer, and one accepts the finitude of life. Once a person reaches that stage, life will begin to have meaning. There will be a purpose. That purpose could even be a quiet, comfortable exit. Unresolved grief or denial, anger, living on false hope, all these can leave a person in a very miserable state. And we as healers must step in and help. In addition to the books mentioned in the video, here is a list of references which have been used for preparing this video. Each one of this is very deep and serious reading. So stop the video, take note of these books or publications, and expand your knowledge for this particular subject. So friends, let me summarize the main points that were covered in this video. First, we must understand that the definition of death as a cessation of vital functions is a very narrow definition. It must also include any life-transforming event or accident. But having done that, we must understand that disclosure brings with it a whole cycle or a cascade of mental states, starting from denial, anger, all the way up to its final acceptance. The sooner we reach the state of acceptance, the more easily we shall be able to resolve our grief. Next, we recognized the signs of denial both by the person involved as well as by caregivers and doctors. How denial works to extend a person's residence in that state only adds to more grief, does not help to resolve. Then we understood that there was a great importance for spiritual preparation, and by spiritual I do not mean any religious rituals, although they can also help. Some of these that we reviewed were the life review process and journaling. We also understood the importance of reconciliation and forgiveness. These topics can be learnt by the person who is in that state or by the caregivers, medical professionals, psychologists, and the other slew of professionals who are there to make life better for that person. Finally, we saw that for each mental state, we could use patch flower remedies. These remedies were developed by a mainstream medical doctor in England nearly 100 years ago. And in my practice, I have never found a single case where they have not worked. So friends, that brings me to the end of this video. Thank you very much for your attention and for staying with me till the end. I trust this will lead you to explore further, and also it will help you help others who are in that state, or for that matter, any person who is in such a state will definitely benefit if they can put into practice some of the processes that have been explained. So once again, thank you very much and bye-bye.